Let's start with a simple question. When you put money in a bank, why do you feel safe? Because you believe banks are regulated, banks follow rules, banks are watched by the government. Now here's an uncomfortable question. What if there is another bank, much bigger than regular banks, but it follows almost no rules, has no signboard, and no one fully watches it? You can't walk into this bank. It has no branches, no app, no customer care, and yet, this bank moves $63 trillion. Pause for a second. What does $63 trillion even mean? It's more than everything the entire world produces in one full year. This is not a movie. This is not a secret society. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a real system running modern finance. It's called the shadow banking system. Think of it like this. You live in a city. The roads have traffic lights, police, speed limits. But underneath the city, there is another city. Down there, no signals, no police. Everyone drives at full speed. That underground city is shadow banking. What happens above ground is what everyone sees. What happens below is what actually controls everything. Here's the scary part. When something breaks inside the shadow system, you don't hear about it first. You only notice it later, when ATMs stop working, when banks shut their doors, when markets crash. That's exactly what happened in 2008, and it happened again in 2020. And every single time, governments were forced to rescue a system that is not officially a bank with trillions of dollars. Why save something that isn't even a bank? Because if it collapses, everything collapses. In this video, we're going to understand what shadow banking really is, how it grew into a $63 trillion giant, why governments are afraid to touch it, and where the next financial crisis may start. Because in today's world, the most dangerous systems are not loud. They are invisible, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. What is shadow banking really? Before we go any further, we need to slow down, because if you don't understand this part, nothing else will make sense. So let's keep it very simple. A normal bank does three basic things. 1. It takes your deposits. 2. It lends that money to others. 3. It follows very strict rules. Rules about how much risk it can take. Rules about how much cash it must keep. Rules about what happens if things go wrong. Now, here's the key idea. Shadow banks do the same three things. They borrow money, they lend money, they create credit, but they are not legally called banks. And that single difference changes everything. Same job, same risks, but no bank label. Think of it like this. A regular bank is a zoo. The animals are dangerous, so there are fences, guards, warning signs. Shadow banking is the jungle. Same animals, same danger, but no fences at all. You don't see the jungle from the road, but it's right there. So what exactly counts as shadow banking? It's not one company. It's not one building. It's a network. It includes things like hedge funds, private equity firms, money market funds, insurance giants, repo markets, special investment vehicles. They all move money. They all take short-term cash and turn it into long-term bets. And they all promise safety. Here's where the story really begins. After the Great Depression, government said something very clear. Banks are too dangerous. So they added rules, lots of rules, capital limits, stress tests, daily reporting, emergency plans. Banks became safer, but also slower. Wall Street didn't like slow, so it found a shortcut. They said, if the rules apply to banks, then we just won't be banks. And slowly, quietly, risky activities moved outside the system. Same behavior, different name. That's how shadow banking was born. Not to break the rules, but to step around them. At first, it seemed harmless. More credit, more liquidity, more profits. Everyone was happy. Investors earned more. Companies borrowed more. Markets grew faster. But there was a hidden problem. No safety net. When banks fail, there are plans. When shadow banks fail, there is panic. Because no one knows who owes what to whom. And here's the most important line in this entire documentary. Shadow banking doesn't sit outside the system. It is plugged directly into it. Banks lend to shadow banks. Shadow banks fund banks. Governments rely on both. Cut one wire, and the whole machine shakes. This is why shadow banking matters. Not because it's secret, not because it's evil, but because it grew faster than anyone could control. And now, It's too big to ignore. How shadow banking grew into 63 trillion. Now the question changes. We know shadow banking exists, but the real question is, how did it get this big? So big that today, the entire financial system depends on it. The answer is one simple phrase: cheap money. After the 2008 financial crisis, the world panicked. Banks were collapsing, jobs were disappearing, markets were crashing. Governments responded the same way. They printed money. They pushed interest rates down. Money became extremely cheap. Banks received this cheap money. But banks had limits. Limits on how much they could lend. Limits on how much risk they could take. Shadow banks had no such limits. So money slowly started flowing out of banks and into the shadows. Where rules are light, money flows fast. Think of it like a dam. Banks are the dam. Rules hold the water back. Shadow banking is the crack on the side of the dam. Water rushes through it. That water is money. The repo market, the invisible engine. Now we reach the most important part, the repo market. It sounds boring, but it's extremely dangerous. A repo is simple. I sell something today. I promise to buy it back tomorrow. In reality, it's overnight borrowing. Trillions of dollars move through this market every single day. Banks use it. Hedge funds use it. This is the bloodstream of shadow banking. If the bloodstream stops, the heart stops. In 2019, that almost happened. Suddenly, no one wanted to lend, not even overnight. The system froze. But you didn't hear about it, because the central bank stepped in within hours and injected trillions. Most people never knew this crisis even happened. But it was a warning shot. Money market funds. The illusion of safety. Now let's look at another risk. Money market funds. They promise one thing. Your money is as safe as cash. But they invest in corporate debt, short-term loans, paper promises. As long as markets are calm, everything looks fine. But when fear enters, everyone tries to pull money at the same time. That's when things break. Shadow banking doesn't fail slowly. It fails all at once. Leverage. Small shocks, massive damage. Now the final piece, leverage. In simple terms, using 10 times, 20 times, sometimes 50 times more money than you actually own. When everything goes right, profits explode. When something goes wrong, the system collapses. This is the core weakness of shadow banking. Cheap money, light rules, extreme leverage turned shadow banking into a $63 trillion giant. Calm on the surface, unstable underneath. When shadow banking breaks, this is where the story turns dangerous. This is where we see what really happens when shadow banking starts to fail. First, remember one rule. Shadow banking does not break slowly. It breaks all at once. 2008. It didn't start with banks. Think back to 2008. Most people believe banks collapsed first, but the real story is different. The first cracks appeared in shadow banking. Mortgage funds failed. Investment vehicles froze. Repo markets stopped working, one after another. The money still existed, but no one wanted to lend. Trust disappeared. When trust breaks, money stops moving. Shadow banks began to scream, "We are collapsing." But there was a problem. They weren't banks. No deposit insurance. No clear rescue plan. No rulebook for failure. Panic spread. And once panic spreads, banks can't survive either. The government's impossible choice. Governments were trapped. On one side, these are not banks. Why should we save them? On the other, if they collapse, the entire system collapses. In the end, there was no real choice. Trillions were injected. Banks were rescued. And shadow banks were rescued too. Not by name, but by money. Those who avoid the rules end up getting rescued. 2020. The same movie again. Now jump to 2020. COVID. Everything stopped. Markets crashed. Bond markets froze. Money market funds shook. Within days, shadow banking was collapsing again. This time, governments didn't wait. Central banks stepped in immediately. Trillions were deployed. The system was paused. When the crisis is big enough, rules suddenly feel optional. The real turning point. These two crises proved one thing clearly. Shadow banking is not outside the system. It is the system's hidden engine. But here's the dangerous truth. Shadow banking now knows. If it falls, the government will step in. That belief is toxic. Moral hazard. The hidden poison. There's a name for this. Moral hazard. It means take bigger risks because you expect someone else to save you. That's why risk didn't shrink. It grew. Leverage increased. The system became more fragile. What gets rescued again and again grows bigger and riskier. Today, shadow banking stands in a place that is too big, too complex, and too fragile. One shock is all it takes. Truth inside the shadow. Now let's pause. We've seen a lot. Big numbers, scary systems, complex words. Now let's say it very simply. Shadow banks create money, lend money, take risks, avoid rules. But when trouble comes, they don't stand alone. The government steps in, the central bank steps in, trillions of dollars step in. Profits are private, losses are public. That is the biggest paradox of modern finance. Shadow banks say, we are not banks, but during a crisis, we are too important to fail. And governments know, if they don't save them, everything collapses. So a natural question appears, what is the solution? More rules or no rules? The truth is, neither is easy. Too many rules, money stops moving. No rules at all, another 2008, another 2020. This system is hard to fix because everyone depends on it. Shadow banking is now too big, too deep, too complex. It is not secret, it is right in front of us. We just don't look. Like pipes inside a wall, they work quietly every day, no noise, until one day they burst. The next financial crisis won't come from somewhere new, it will come from the same shadows. After watching this video, when you hear the news, when markets start falling, when someone says, liquidity crisis, you'll know where the real drama is happening, inside the shadows. Final thought, this documentary is not meant to scare you, it is meant to explain. Because when you understand the system can't surprise you so easily. If this video made you think, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, shadow, because real power often lives where light does not reach.